Yeah, here we go. All right. So, CHIA network. Uh, the right away is it seems to aim big with the International Financial Corporation. We see some climate action data trust, and it calls itself the new standard in digital infrastructure and blockchain technology. Built for the government, for developers, for enterprise creators, and for farmers. So pretty much farmers being the crypto people, artists, governments, they are going for that quite hard. Now let's try to get an overview what this project wants to be about apart from the technical side. The technology here is not front and center on the blockchain, sorry, on the website at least. Security, sustainability, and regulatory compliance. So, I mean, security, of course, blockchain, right? Sustainability is a thing that makes marketing a blockchain to investors and governments a lot easier. It's also not a bad thing in and of itself. Don't get me wrong, sustainability is good. Being eco-friendly is great. But when I see this written large, I do think, who are they talking to when they're talking about this? Regulatory compliancy, well, that is certainly not aimed at users because for users, this is not a good thing. This is, however, a good thing for investors, for governments, for the existing financial infrastructure, for existing market infrastructure as well. Carbon markets, very hype thing, very big thing. And together with the sustainability and the regulatory compliancy, when I saw the carbon markets, I thought I have a bit of a feeling already where this thing is trying to go. And then we have talk about blockchain technology, the CHIA open digital economy, where they're talking about how they're connecting the world, want to connect the world, secure infrastructure, unified trust. Basically, they explain the upsides of a distributed ledger in so many ways, again and again. I would say at 20 to 50 different ways they explain basically just what are the upsides of using blockchain technology. And this again made me think, who is this aimed at? It doesn't seem to be aimed at end users so much, doesn't seem to be aimed at crypto experts or crypto users even who know all that stuff and don't need to be told the same thing in 20 different ways. It seemed to me to be aimed more at, honestly, at investors pretty much. They're also planning on doing an IPO, so the company wants to go public on the stock market, and that fits together. Um, there will be a lot of this, right? So improve trust and collaboration. That's just what blockchains do. Security and efficiency combined. Okay, the efficiency part is admittedly not what many blockchains do, being honest here, but they have a way that is more scalable. Admittedly, they do have a way that is more scalable. And then they have Chia for creators, innovators, artists, collectors, basically NFTs. So they also have NFTs. Build dApps, games, and more. Again, this is just the usual Web3 stuff. Every smart contract capable blockchain can do that. Grow the network and earn. They don't have mining as such, they have farming. It's a similar but different thing. That's interesting. That's one of the actually interesting things about this project. Now let's get a bit of an overview. How big or small is this thing? On LinkedIn, I know it's not the most common crypto platform, but anyway, 4,500 followers. I think for LinkedIn, that's not a bad number. On their Reddit, they have 46,000 members. That's not nothing. On Discord, surprisingly, only 4,500. Surprising because they have 10 times as much on Reddit, and they have a 20 something times as much on X, formerly Twitter, 101,000, which is a lot. They've been around for a while though, 2017, 2018, the project started. So they had time to build that, but still, that is a big number. So that's not bad, right? That is certainly not bad. And yeah, let's continue getting an impression of the project. We will also go a bit into the tech, don't you worry. But I found the whole thing, I found the whole package interesting to go through. Let's put it like that. So very strong on compliance, yeah, which really big in the current order in the current system. That does make sense. You're not going to be really big if you're not compliant. That's just a fact. And so they're talking about how they're compliant, how they're talking with the SEC, how they're talking with the CFTC, and they have regular back and forth with those two admittedly rather important entities. They have a ton of very big investors behind them, like really big ones. We get to that as well. And then this is interesting. We are confident that XCH, that is the Chia token, does not constitute a security. Well, they might be wrong about that. They might definitely be wrong about that, but it's not clear. In any case, they say they are in contact with all the regulating agencies. They are super behind compliance and so on, which again, it's not really great for the user, but it is a necessity if you want to be really big. And I don't mean crypto space big, I mean global business big, right? Which is quite the difference still. Another thing, sustainability. They talk a lot about that. They do have a bit of a point. Bitcoin does use a ton of energy. That is true. I mean, Bitcoin uses the amount of energy that some countries use. Not the biggest countries, admittedly, but still, it does use a lot. And Chia doesn't. Now, of course, you could say Bitcoin is used a lot more, which is true, but still, Chia is certainly more energy efficient than Bitcoin is. In any case, sustainability is another thing that they talk a lot about. And again, this makes me think, who are they talking to? To cut this a bit shorter, I get the impression a lot that a lot of their website, their communication is aimed at the IPO. They want to bring this company to the stock market, which means, by the way, an exit for the founders. It's a so-called exit, right? So they have a bunch of Silicon Valley investors, and all of these, they all make their money when the company IPOs. That means goes public on the stock market. That's when they and the founders make their money. And so that's what they're working towards. And my impression was they're working towards that pretty hard. Let's also later see how this is going. Here's their blog, again, talking about markets. Inclusivity is another topic. What do we have here? Yeah, how do you know your handbag is genuine? This is often mentioned use case of NFTs, right? Where an NFT is attached to some luxury product. So this is nothing unique or new. Again, we have this carbon credit trading multiple times, which is a super big, super hot topic in big money circles. Think about carbon credit trading, whatever you want. It is big and it is growing. So yeah, there's money to be made, right? It's another one of these things that get big, big money interested when they hear that, like sustainability, like inclusivity, and these certain big money buzzwords. Now, a bit more technology and other stuff. This is a Messari report. Messari is usually really good with their insights. So it's a layer one blockchain, as I mentioned. It's its own thing, its own technology. It's not based on other technology, and that's interesting. They have a few interesting partnerships as well. There were a few things here that I wanted to mention. Can I find them quickly? The energy we had. Oh, yeah, we can quickly talk about the network architecture. So, now let me expand a bit on this actually, because this graphic is really useful for that. Thank you, Masari, for that. So, It is based on what Chia calls an improved Nakamoto consensus, a new form of Nakamoto consensus. So it's still Nakamoto consensus, but it's not proof of work, which usually is taken to be synonymous, kinda. Proof of work and Nakamoto consensus. So what Chia is doing instead is what they call in short post, oh, I can't mark it because it's a picture, proof of space and time. So that's an interesting one that I'm not. I might have, but if so, I don't remember. Anyway, proof of space and time. What is that? We've heard a lot of proof of things for consensus in the past, right? Obviously, proof of work, proof of stake, distributed proof of stake, proof of authority, and a few others. Proof of space and time. Now, what is that? To compare, let's use proof of work. Proof of work means that there's work to be done. This is computing work that the nodes, the computers have to do. And well, this costs energy, thereby also time and money. Main point is nothing happens on that chain if not work is put into it. And this work is used to prove the legitimacy and the correctness of the transactions, all transactions in the ledger. Now, instead of work, they want to use space and time. What do they mean by space? They mean storage space on your hard disk or on your SSD. Not necessarily yours, only yours if you want to farm Chia. But if you run a Chia node, you don't need massive amounts of computing power like you use for proof of work blockchains. Here, the more storage space you have, the better. And also, if it's fast, that's not bad. SSD is definitely preferred, but also, of course, a lot more expensive. Um, and then there's this proof of time thing. Now let's get into this a bit. Let's use this picture, which is really good, to explain how this works on the consensus model. So where in Bitcoin, there would be a block and there would be given by the blockchain a certain difficulty level that is demonstrated by you need to find a hash that fits this block's data and also fits these requirements as in it needs to have at least this many zeros. And the more zeros it needs to have, the more difficult it is to find because the fewer hashes that are fitting for that block and have the required number of zeros exist. Here, you can just create all kinds of hashes. And it's very minimal computing work that's necessary to create these hashes here. And then you just store them on your hard drive or on your SSD. And the more storage space you have, the more hashes you can store. And this is where the proof of space name comes from. Now then, when a block is now to be made, then this block is being calculated as having a certain hash. And then all the so-called farms, the plots they're called also, they like to use terms from farming, like plots. All these plots are searched through to see who has a hash, which farmer, which node has a hash stored that is closest to the necessary hash. And the one that is closest to the looked for hash, that one will be used. And that means, of course, that the more storage space a node has, the higher the chance that the best hash on the network for that particular block is there, right? If you have 1% of all storage space and it is full of hashes, then you have a 1% chance of having the best hash. If you have 10% of all storage space on the Chia network, then for each block you have 10% chance of having the best fitting hash. So this is how that part works. And then the farmer who has the right hash will then also choose actually what goes into the block. That's an interesting thing. That's a really interesting detail, by the way. Chooses what goes into the block, puts the hash there, And so, yeah, I have to correct myself. That means that the necessary hash is actually not decided by the contents of the block, it's decided by the network. It's a In that way, it's a bit similar to Bitcoin and how it gives requirements for the hash that need to be fulfilled. Then this thing that the farmer who has the best hash gets to decide what goes into the block, that's a really interesting feature, and honestly, it's pretty cool. Why? Because in most blockchains, the ones I know how they do it in that particular aspect at least, if multiple nodes work together in a farming pool, a mining pool, or a staking pool, then the pool decides what goes into the block, not the individual miner farmer. And that's different here. And that's actually cool because it means that there is more decentralization. Now, in most blockchains, to make it a bit more specific, if you have 10 nodes, be they miners, stakers, or farmers, doesn't matter. If you have 10 nodes that are one pool, then if any one of these gets the right hash, and therefore the pool gets the block, then the pool gets to decide what is that block, what goes in the block, or doesn't. And that means it doesn't matter if there's 1 or 10 or 1,000 in there. It's always one decision maker, which is the pool manager, if you will. And that is, of course, not so great for centralization, for decentralization, because if there's 1,000 nodes in that pool, it's still just one decision maker. It's not 1,000 decision makers. So that definitely takes away from decentralization. Whereas here, if there's 1,000 members in one pool and one of these 1,000 members gets the block, then that one member decides what goes into the block and not the whole pool. The whole pool shares in the rewards, but only the single member gets to decide what's in the block. And that's pretty cool because it does increase decentralization. So there are some interesting ideas in this thing. I'm not a huge fan, to spoiler that, but they have interesting ideas, definitely, and some ideas that are worth considering. This one, for example, that the individual member decides what goes into a block, not the pool. Okay, what's the proof of time thing? Excuse my phone, please. Proof of time means that okay, so I've said that the network gives like a target hash, and then the farmers can all look who has the closest hash to that target hash. And then the network gives the next target hash. And then the network gives the next target hash, and so on and so on. And for every hash that is given, a block is created. Now, the thing is that there should only be so many blocks per time. This is also important because if you can have an completely arbitrary number of blocks per time, then that makes it much easier to have a longer chain and do an attack on the network, right? So there's a security concern about that. So because they don't have this proof of work, where just the extreme difficulty of finding the correct hash is the thing that makes it slow, as in Bitcoin. And I will point out again, this slowness is for security reason, and there's a trade-off there. We don't have that, right? All the hashes, not all that could exist, but all the hashes that there are already there, and then it's just looking up where is the best hash, and that's used, and that's that. So they don't have to be calculated on the fly. So in theory, the blocks here could be super fast. It could be thousands of blocks a second. But that is very attackable, and that's not good. And this is why they have this proof of time thing with what they call a verifiable delay function. Long story short about that, this is a function that can cryptographically prove that a certain thing that does nothing but waste a certain amount of time on your computer, or to be more precise, on the so-called Time Lord node's computer, has run that many times to make sure at least this much time has elapsed. And only when this verifiable delay function has been solved and published, only then will the next target hash be accepted. and therefore the next block can only then be created. So with these two things together, they say this is how their network is secure. It does not take so much energy. The time loads are kind of power intensive, yes, but you don't need a lot of them. In theory, one time load is enough. One is not great because if that one is out of order, then the network goes down. But you don't need many time loads. What you do need is, or want to have, is a lot of farm storage space when it's not actively written or to or read from doesn't use that much energy. These computations that, for example, Bitcoin and other proof of work chains do are a lot more energy intensive than just running SSDs or hard drives. Yeah, so that's how that works, right? We have a so-called proof of space. It's a weird term anyway. And then we have a thing that makes sure that we don't have ridiculous speeds that make it attackable by basically proving that a certain amount of time must have elapsed. It's interesting. It's definitely an interesting one. Was there something else worth mentioning? Yes, actually. The programming language used here for smart contracts is a Lisp dialect, which I guess is way more interesting to me than it is to you. So I make this very short. Lisp is a very famous but also very weird and not widely used programming language because it's super different than nearly all other programming languages. Because it's a functional language, I'm not going to go into what that means. You know or you don't. If you want, look it up. But let's just say that it is wildly different to program in functional languages than it is to program in most used computer languages. Wildly different. So that's an interesting choice. It has certain upsides. It is easier to verify the correctness, for example. So it definitely has its upsides. And it's kind of cool. It's very nerdy. I like that. Is that a great choice? It might be a great choice from the technical perspective when it comes to ensuring correctness of smart contracts. I think it could actually be a smart choice for that. Of course, the downside is that very few people write Lisp compared to most other programming languages. So you're not going to get a ton of developers that can just jump in and create smart contracts for CHIA because they use this, well, the language that basically every programmer knows or most programmers know of, but can't actually work with. Tokenomics rather simple. There is a what they call a strategic reserve, and that's pretty big. And then there are the block rewards. That's pretty much it, really. They say no one gets tokens from the reserve and so on. But they also say the tokens from the reserve could be used to buy back shares for the company and stuff like that. So to be honest, this is a bit unclear to me because they kind of talk both ways, right? So the reserve tokens won't be given out, but then also sometimes they can be given out. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to show here. Yes, that was all I wanted to show here. Here again, going back to this kind of marketing, they have many things on their website, but they're kind of all the same. Enabling the metaverse, enhanced protection, interoperability, connectivity, Web3 digital economy, NFTs, data, asset tokens, offers. Really, all this is pretty much just it's a blockchain that has NFTs. That's really what this comes down to. And then they explain all the things that you can do with it that we all know of, which is why I'm really just skipping over that because to us, this is just not news, right? Of course, yeah, you can have in-game items. You can have items in virtual worlds that have proper ownership. Yes, we know that. So there's no news here. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they spend a lot of time talking about this. How it can be used for gaming, how it can be used for metaverse, how it can be used for art, all of which boils down to NFT. That's really it from the technical perspective. So again, who are they talking to? I don't think they're talking to crypto people. The data is correct. The data is verifiably trustworthy and safe and not tampered with and so on. Yes, yes, it's a blockchain. Of course, that's the point. Trust across parties, secure data sharing, accountability, auditability, and so on and so on. Make your data permanent and provable. Again, they're just basically explaining the upsides of what a blockchain is. Yeah, a new level of trust, scalable is not the case for all blockchains. I say that again. I do think that Chia is scalable. That is my impression. But apart from that, it's just, oh, this is the upsides that blockchain brings. And then private or public blockchain, that's a little bit of a semi-interesting one. You can basically, on Chia, you can have features of a private blockchain on a public blockchain, which is also not unique. Yeah, you can have that with others, like access controls to certain things. This is not unique, but it is something that is certainly attractive to businesses and other entities. But it's not world changing, at least if you are in crypto for a while, right? Um, Strengthen trust, mitigate fraud and corruption, safeguard critical data, reduce bureaucracy. This is basically dreaming about what the blockchain could do in bureaucracy. And that's all correct. That is all correct, actually. The blockchain could be brilliant in governance and in governments and in bureaucracy. It could be really, it could make things so much more efficient while being super safe and secure and accessible at the same time. But for us, all of this again is not news. So, yeah, again, they're just saying, why are blockchains good? Why is this technology in principle good? Then here we have have something for the artists, for the game makers as well. Get the royalties you deserve. Your art can be peer-to-peer traded. You can prove that stuff is really from you and really owned by that other person, and so on and so on. Again, this is basically saying we have NFTs. The things they're saying, they're not wrong. These are all real upsides of this technology, but it's just they say this a lot in so many different ways, and I found this just interesting. Again, strengthen security, control permission, data integrity, and carbon markets. All right, we gotta have those carbon markets in there. Scalability, supply chain, healthcare, payments, government, and financial markets. Together with games and artists, they've covered basically all the things that blockchains could be used for. That was a thing that I found a little bit suspicious. I mean, suspicious maybe not the right word, but if you look at enough pages on their website, they do basically say their blockchain is for absolutely every use case. Then they have, as a bit of a technical thing, I make this short. It's actually not super interesting, but for completeness sake, they have a model that is a bit similar to the unspent transaction output model that Bitcoin has, but it's not the same. They do not have an account system. So it is not as Ethereum has an account system, right? On Ethereum, it says this address has this many Ethereum, this many token A, this many token B. So the numbers there are stored in the account. This is not how Bitcoin does it exactly. This is also not how Chia does it. Chia has these coin sets, which are kind of like unspent or spent, but let's say unspent transaction outputs. So you have so-called coins. There's a technical term, not to be confused with actual coins, like crypto tokens or coins. And these have a puzzle that needs to be so. Let's say these coins are encrypted, and if you want to spend them, you have to be able to decrypt them. Everyone can spend these coins if he or she is able to decrypt them with a key. Yeah, they call it the puzzle hash. Let's just call it the key to unlock the value stored in a coin. The coin is more like an envelope, actually. And so here, what you do is you spend the you if you send a transaction, what you actually do is you send the ID of a coin and the key to unlock the value within, you send that to somebody else. You don't really send the coin itself. It is very similar to unspent transaction outputs. Um, I I don't really see the big upside of of this. It's a bit different. It's not unique either. It's yeah, it is really all I have to say about this. And then there is a lot of actually, there is quite a bit about buying and farming. They do want people to do that, which makes sense because the more people run Chia farms, the better the numbers look. It's good for the IPO, right? It's good for going live on the stock market. The higher the price of Chia, very good for the IPO, good for the stock market. So these numbers are important. Now, while the price of Chia has absolutely dumped massively, talking 99% plus here, we'll show you in a moment, the number of nodes is actually really big. It's fallen a lot, but they had at some point, I think they had over 100,000 nodes running, which is very cool. That's really nice. It has gone down a lot though, because the price of Chia has gone down a lot. I'll show you that as well in a moment. But yeah, just showing you that you can farm this if you have the storage space. You likely shouldn't because currently, depending, like if you're paying for electricity, even though this takes a lot less electricity than actual mining a proof of work thing, you will still, right now, you will pay more in electricity just for your hard disks or SSDs than you will make from it. So currently, not a good idea unless you wildly believe in and want to support the Chia project. Here we have a bit more about, what is blockchain security first. Oh, no, sorry, this is not this. This is about what Chia, how Chia is a bit different. So, security first approach. Okay, sure, they all say that. Regulatory compliance. This is good if you want to play in the big money markets and you want to IPO. Sustainability is a word that definitely is good if you want to play with the big boys. Inclusivity is a word that's really good if you want to play with the big boys, as are carbon credits again. Um, Reducing friction, increasing access, be inclusive, be green. This is all, I mean, what can I say? We all know the stuff, right? Funded by reputable investors. That's actually true. They have, and let me just say a few here. Andreessen Horowitz, one of the biggest in Silicon Valley. Richmond Global Ventures, Slow Ventures, True Ventures, Greylock, DCM, and others. So they are massively backed by Silicon Valley venture capital, which is why they want to IPO, which is why their website talks so much about the same thing in different words and tries to be attractive, really not so much to you, not so much to me, but it tries to be really attractive to, well, people who might buy a ton of stock on the stock market, for example, or other investors. Yeah, and yeah, here we have the carbon markets. Um, so pretty much everything that you need if you want to look good for huge hedge funds, right? Compliance, sustainability, inclusivity, carbon credits. Put some blockchain on top of that. Surprised there's no AI in here. Anyway, this one, okay, this is a bit pointless. Excuse me. This can go away. Here's the team. So there is a public team and so on, which is not surprising because they want to, they want to go to the stock market. So it's not an anonymous project or anything. I didn't look into these people. Bram Cohen, I know, kind of heard of him. Bram Cohen is a pretty smart guy, technical guy. Um, he did something good before. I think he did some peer-to-peer file sharing thing, maybe BitTorrent actually. He might be the guy who made BitTorrent or something like that. So he's a pretty cool, smart guy. The other people, I don't know. Chia has a grants program where if you develop something for or on Chia, you can get a grant. Here are a few projects that got grants. So a wallet, and a 3D NFT minter, a browser plugin wallet, plugin for the browser like like MetaMask, for example. Dex is getting funded, two Dexes actually, and a few others. So they do have some money, not surprising with the kind of VC backing that they have. They do have some money to try to build an ecosystem with it. And yeah, here this was just a reminder for me in case I forgot to mention it that they use this Lisp dialect. I guess it looks just as ununderstandable as any other programming language if you're not a programmer. But if you're a programmer, this looks kind of understandable, but also very weird because it's functional programming. Anyway, this was just as a reminder for myself. Now let's look at this though. The price development has not been kind. The markets have not been kind to this project. So this is the all-time graph. You can see we're now at $14.80, and I might say $14.80. That's not so bad, is it? Now the market cap is just 161 million though, which at that price is, I mean, they don't have a lot of coins, so it's kind of okay. But why is the current price of, what was it again? 15? Oh, oh, now the zoom function isn't working anymore. My bad. Sorry, let me try to fix that. Can I? Yes. 1260 now. Oh, it was 1260. It's 1470. Doesn't really matter. 12 to 15. Let's call it 12 to $15. Now, at the very start here, 872. And then an all-time high of 1,600. And now we are below 16. So not only is that a minus 99 over minus 99% from all-time high, but also looking that the initial price was over half of the all-time high, so it didn't even make it 2x at the best of times. Which, by the way, that a project doesn't 2x does really not actually mean the project is bad in any way. It really doesn't, yeah. Because the crypto markets are super nuts and crazy and manipulated and ridiculous. Let's be real about that. A project making exploding in price does not necessarily mean it's good, and a project not exploding in price does not necessarily mean it's bad. But still, with this kind of backing, with the money that they had, the marketing they could have made, it does surprise me that they didn't even manage a 2x. Yeah, from 880 to 1,600 is what is like 1.9 or something x, 1.8, 1.9. But yeah, even from the launch of or the earliest price I can find on CoinMarketCap, to be honest, I think that's the launch. 870. Oh, that's a bit fiddly sometimes, the zooming in and out here. Anyway, 870 to this is what, like 60 no, 98% or so it must be. Let me check that quickly. It is late here and I was sick for a while, so I'm a bit tired. I'm not sure if I can run the numbers in my head right now. Let me quickly calculate that. That is, let's say, okay, 27. Oh, I did this wrong even. Yeah. Yeah, that is down even from the launch. So from all-time high, we're down over 99%. And from the initial price, we are also down 98.3, roughly 98.3%. Yeah, so that is pretty bad. And then it just stayed there, right? It just stayed there. It never got back up. It never got another spike or anything. Let me try to quickly refresh this so we have a proper graph. Yeah, just stayed there and that's that. And yeah, well, this is not a good sign. This is really not a good sign. But they still want to IPO. They want to IPO, I think, since a year or two, and they already tried to, but then they didn't. Here was something that was worrying to me here, actually. I was checking a bit what the mood was on Reddit about this project. The blockchain, this was 2 months ago, so this is not super old. Oh my goodness, I'm so bad at Reddit. Sorry. The blockchain still lacks stable wallet software, and this is confirmed by a few commenters. So that's pretty bad. I mean, that's really bad, I have to say, because this is not new. So there is an issue where sometimes you just have to make new wallets because the old one just gets more and more buggy. Then there are quite a few people turning off their chia farms in space. So some people bought a ton of hard disks or SSDs because, as I said, there's a proof of space and time thing. If you run a regular node, this for you is proof of space. That means you don't invest in computing power and hashing power, you invest in storage space. And running this now costs more in energy costs than it brings back in Chia value. So people are turning off their farms, and quite a few are doing this because it's no longer sustainable. And that's not a great sign either. And then there was a thing that was last year when they also wanted to IPO but didn't. Oh, they were also involved with Credit Suisse, which then I think crashed or something in 2022 or 23. So they picked a bank for their IPO, which then went bust. That didn't help, I guess, or nearly went bust. And Shia had to lay off employees as well last year. So they are in some trouble. The number of users, I mean, users is barely existing anyway. They had like they have less than 100,000 on their marketplaces, on their NFT marketplaces, for example. Less than $100,000 a year on their NFT marketplaces. So basically, it barely has any users, to be honest. Although it is interesting tech. Oh, where's the GitHub? There was something important I wanted to show you too. Yeah, and it's got some issues. One thing I wanted to show, and this worried me. This worried me really. First, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. They're using a Lisp dialect for their smart contracts. That's cool. Okay, very interesting. But then I saw Chia blockchain is done in Python. And that is I mean, that's just a terrible choice to write a blockchain in. So there's activity here. They're doing things. Last commit was like 2 weeks ago. Oh, yesterday. Something happened yesterday. So that's good. They're working on it actively. I don't know how much or intensely. They have a lot of contributors, which is good. But their node software is written in Python. And that is a weird choice, really, because it's a scripting. It's extremely not fast. It's very, very much not performant. That's the point here. A lot of people can write Python, so that's not bad. But you don't need so many people to write the actual blockchain software. Where you really want tons of people is to write the smart contracts, right? To build on top of the blockchain. So they kind of got it reversed. They picked a very slow language that a ton of people can write for their node software, for their blockchain software. But then they picked the also slow, but it really has upsides. But barely anybody writes this language for the smart contracts. That's an odd choice that I don't quite understand. I'm not saying it's a wrong choice, but I don't understand it. Again, doesn't mean that it's wrong. I don't get it. But that doesn't. Oh shoot, I was muted. Oh, please tell me I wasn't muted all the time. I will have to check if I was muted all the time. I just saw that I was muted. Okay. In any case, that's what I had to say about Chia. Thank you very much for watching and see you again next time. With that, have a good one. Bye bye.